Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Peaceful Growth Podcast. It has been a while since we have a guest on the podcast. I think the last guest was 3 or 4 weeks ago while I was taking a little bit break. So, my apologies if you're waiting for the next episode, but here it is. I'm here today with a very special guest, Katie Kate. She's a co-founder and CEO of Barn2. And I met Katie actually last year during the WordCamp US. That was the first time where I met her, and I learned about her business and most importantly, her transparency report that she publishes every year, which is actually very, very helpful anyone who is starting a WordPress business or already running a WordPress business. So today, I'm going to ask Katie a lot of different things about how to start a WordPress business, especially from the stage of idea generation all the way to growing it to a successful business. Talking about the growth, one great thing that I have learned about Katie and her business, Barn2, is that so far, I think I had somewhere around 26 guests in this podcast, and the very few actually has been able to grow the business to $1 million plus. And Barn2 is one of those business who is actually hit that magic number of 1 million. So it is certainly a very interesting growth strategy, growth story. And as this is a peaceful growth, I'm very delighted to have Katie here. Hey, Katie, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Katie, there's a lot that I have been learning about you since last few years, especially we met after we met during the WordCamp US and in DC. And I really appreciate everything that you are doing, especially with your transparency report, where you publish a lot of interesting things about your business. So I wanted to kind of like start with, just tell us a little bit about your story. How did you start it, Barn2?
So I run the company with my husband, Andy, and we started in 2010 as a web design company. We'd always wanted to start a business together and work for ourselves, but we had traditional jobs for years. And he was a software developer and my background was project management and marketing. So we felt that together, the combination of our skills could lead to a successful business. And so eventually we finally got round to it after talking and not doing anything for years. Obviously, the most important thing to any kind of growth is doing stuff. That's my top tip. So we eventually actually did something and we thought, what can we realistically do? We don't want to raise money. We don't like startup culture. We want to just do something that is realistic. So we thought, well, web design has a low barrier to entry. Anybody can build a website, and with my marketing skills as well, we could offer the SEO and the copywriting side of things, as well as the technical stuff that he did. And we discovered WordPress and never looked back. So we built a reasonably successful web design agency. There was a few things holding back our growth, such as not wanting to grow a big team. So we kept reaching a ceiling of what our capacity was. And then we'd experiment with things like hiring freelancers, but there was always another ceiling. And where we got really stuck was project management. I was managing all the projects, which involved communicating with clients and also the freelancers who were building the sites and doing different tasks. And whenever we tried to outsource project management, the project was not very successful. The client wasn't happy. They didn't understand our ethos. Obviously, our freelance model and not wanting an in-house team wasn't working. So instead of building a team, which we weren't really interested in at that time, we thought, well, products can scale. So let's build some WordPress products. And we already were in the WordPress space, of course, as a WordPress company. So we, and we'll get onto this later in today, we're able to identify ideas for new products. And we went in that direction. And that did incredibly well and grew really quickly. Somehow, within 6 months of launching our first product, we could stop taking on new client projects and we focused primarily on the products ever since.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have 19 premium plugins and team of 19 right now.
I never thought of it like that, but yes, it is the same number twice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed.
So, and you also mentioned something about agency, that you had an agency that you started in 2009 and then eventually transitioned to more into product business. So
yeah.
My question is, like, when you started in 2009, which year was it when you were started slowly entering into the product space?
Well, we experimented with a theme that was never launched in 2013, but we did it properly in 2016, where we launched a plugin, and we chose the idea much more wisely. Our theme just wasn't realistic. It was too big for just the two of us, and we just had bitten off more than we could chew, really. And but in 2016, we chose small self-contained plugin ideas which didn't exist elsewhere in the market, so that we could build a minimum viable product relatively quickly and get that to market. And because it didn't already exist in the market, my content writing skills were able to generate sales quite easily, because nobody was optimizing for these keywords, because the product didn't even exist. So by finding something unique, that was how we got into it, and that was 2016.
Okay, so interesting. So 2009 to 2016, around that time, you were still doing some sort of agency business, right? And in 2016, you fully transitioned to product? Okay, makes sense. So one question I wanted to ask you in your transition from agency to product, and this is something that I have noticed even talking to some other guests in the past and from our own transition as well, that there are like different goals, so some people, some entrepreneurs actually, they move from agency to product because agency is a little bit overwhelming, or they did not enjoy like the agency, running an agency, and the product was kind of like a version which is a little bit more manageable, but also kind of like gives that small but consistent growth without a lot of stress and the management. For Multidots, for us, it was more like a different decision. So we went actually into the product for more revenue growth. So we still enjoy agency, we still have big agency, but we started to stepping into the product for adding more revenue. So I wanted to just kind of like ask you the question in like, how do you think about that? Like this, is there any other different goals that you have seen or hear the stories where companies move from agency to product?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, because it depends on people's personalities as much as anything, and their goals. A lot want to do it because it's a more, if it's successful, if your product's successful, it can be a more sustainable way to generate more revenue than, it's because you're not selling your time. And you can scale an agency, as you will know, through building a team, for example, and productizing your services. And there are lots of ways to scale an agency. But in theory, some time is getting sold somewhere when you're providing services for people. Whereas with products, you build it once and then you can sell the same thing many times. Of course, you have to provide support, ongoing maintenance. But in theory, if you can get the sales high enough, and once your product is bedded in, with initial bug fixes sorted and things like that, then it should be able to scale more easily. But it's not just about scalability, it's also about what you would enjoy. Some people, maybe much more people than me, and they really like the more intense, you really get to know your clients when you're building a website or plugin or something for them individually. Whereas with the product model, you get contact with your clients a lot, but it's very brief. You don't really get to know their needs and requirements and personalities in the same way. So people might prefer the agency model where they're providing services.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. That everyone has a slightly different goal, and but it's not everyone moves from agency to product or product to agency, for a same reason. And that's something that I've been trying to understand the pattern. And one thing that came into a discussion with a few other WordPress-based product owners, that we were kind of like brainstorming this idea that if we look into the WordPress ecosystem, hosting companies, most likely they are the big one, right? So their revenues are in hundreds of millions of dollars. Second largest probably is the agency types of businesses, right? So TANUP, I think they are somewhere around 40 million a year. There are a couple of other agencies which are also doing tens of millions of dollars in agency business.
Like Codable and so on as well. Yeah.
Correct. Right. And then comes the product. So in the product, I think if I remember correctly, probably the Yoast is, let's say, was $10 million revenue when they, right? So that's kind of like what I remember. I don't know if there is any other WordPress plugin business which was higher than 10 million in annual revenue. Do you know any business which were higher than 10 million in WordPress product?
No, and the bigger ones don't tend to publish it. So Gravity Forms, LearnDash, probably similar, but I'm speculating. But they're big, but not hosting company big.
Correct. Yeah. So that's kind of like interesting, right? Because when agency, they try to move to product, hoping that, this is going to be a bigger business than agency. But in reality, like agency and the product, like, there is like a huge gap in terms of the revenue. But like if you're looking for more like a manageable, a predictable revenue, and also a smaller business which can generate a few $1 million of revenue, then I think the product, it will be an interesting space to kind of like step into. But overall, I think the underlying message here is that there are like multiple different reasons people actually move from agency to product or product to agency. It's really important to understand and know the little bit of homework to find out that what's your goal. Because if, let's say, when Multidots, we were thinking about going to product, we were like, we're going to actually do more revenue and bigger business than agency, which eventually I learned that will not be the case with the product, because if we want to grow the revenue, we should stay more in the agency than the product. So it had like a different learning aspect. Anything you wanted to add into that before we move to the next one?
No, that makes sense. Interesting point.
Yeah. I wanted to ask this question, that you have built a very successful product business, almost, I think, around 1.5 million revenue that you shared in your last transparency report for Barn2 Plugins. And so if somebody starting a product business, WordPress plugin or product business in 2024, what would you advise to avoid? Because I think there are a lot of advice that you should do this, you should do that. I'm kind of like collecting more advice on what to avoid, what not to do in order to grow a successful business. So do you have any tips for that?
I'm going to give you a double negative. Avoiding marketing. Because a lot of people that go into WordPress products are developers, and their skills are the coding and the product. And when you're a solopreneur, it's very tempting to focus on your own skill set and what you know and what you're good at. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if there's a massive area that will grow your business that you don't enjoy and don't have the skills in, then that can be a problem. And in the WordPress space, I often see that happen with marketing, because the developers don't know it, not interested. So they launch these excellent products, but they don't follow through to make it truly successful because they don't have that marketing. So ways around that would be perhaps to partner with a marketing expert, as part of like a co-founder or something like that, or to hire to it. So, for example, a good starting point would be Ellipsis, who specialize in marketing for WordPress agencies, or just any marketing person. But don't avoid marketing.
That's a very good advice. And I learned it actually hard way. I was one of those, the product founder, especially with Multicollab, we kind of like did the similar thing. Like we built a great product. We focused on adding a lot of features. And we were hoping that, oh, this is an awesome product. Everyone is going to find out and going to love it and going to buy it. That doesn't happen like that. Like you really have to put efforts into marketing and create a little bit more awareness. So that any other things that you would suggest to avoid?
I would say think about what's realistic for you. If you have really big aims and people with lots of skills and you're getting maybe venture capital or a backer of some kind, then think big with your product. Think a product can be big in terms of the initial development, also the challenges of getting it to market. So if you have all those resources in place, then maybe do enter a competitive corner of the market and compete with some big players. Whereas if you're a small company, solopreneur, maybe it's your first product, then don't do that. You're probably not going to have success with that. And it's really easy to convince yourself, well, if say there's this massive cake, which is LMS plugins or membership plugins or something, and if I get a tiny 1% slice of the cake, then I'll be doing great. But how are you even going to get that 1%? You might be better off getting 100% or 70% of a much smaller cake than trying to get a tiny percentage of a massive one that you're never actually going to achieve based on your resources. So I'd say plan it all around your context and your capacity and resources.
Makes sense. You mentioned about, as we are on the topic of some of the marketing strategies too, like you mentioned, focus on marketing, and so what particular marketing strategy that you think has worked really well for you, and what are the marketing strategies or channels that somebody should avoid because it might be a time waster for them?
I think in this day and age, with all the Google changes and AI and uncertainty, it's good to have multiple marketing channels so that if one drops, then the others can help you and you don't just lose all your sales.
Yeah.
So we've always done best out of content marketing and SEO, but we also have a full-time YouTube person. And if you're not at that stage, you can do videos yourself of how to use your products and things. And we also do Facebook ads and Google ads, and we measure how profitable they are and keep making improvements and things to make sure it's good value for money. So I'd say try and have a few marketing strategies that all come together. And then if something does go wrong, then you're kind of still okay. In October, there was lots, between October and March, really, there have been massive Google algorithm changes, which I think they called helpful content or something. And for the first time ever, we saw quite a big drop in October 2023. We were like, oh my God, and our sales, they didn't go down that much, but they did drop significantly. Yeah. And it was really interesting that the other channels didn't drop. So YouTube was generating more sales than ever. So that partially helped to make up for the drop in the sales from organic SEO. And we're doing fine now. And the latest changes in March, we're up. So that's great. But it really showed me the importance of not having all of your eggs in one basket in terms of marketing. But you also asked about what might be a time sink, what to avoid. And I would say that social media, particularly from a company perspective, is I've never really seen any benefit from at all. So I'm talking about the Barn2, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. We don't maybe put as much effort in as we could, but I did have hired someone in the past and have assigned various team members over the years to try to get conversations going. And from a brand perspective, it's never worked. So I get a lot of value out of my own personal slash professional Twitter for me as an individual, and I learn a lot from the community, and we do raise awareness of the products a bit and the company quite a lot from that. So there is value in social, but from the company doing social, I think that's limited.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think we also observed something similar to that. And I've been to a few courses about social media, how to kind of like use social media to build your personal and professional brand. And one key lesson in that was that people actually go on social media to connect with other people. It's very less likely that they will fall in love with like just a brand, right? Like, because brand, you feel like it still doesn't feel like a person. It feels like it's a company, as a team. They are just, and so there is no any personal connection. But yeah, when you kind of like post valuable content from your personal account, it actually resonate more with the people. And I started that as well since last, I think, 2 years. I started to focus more on my personal social media brand than our business social media accounts.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to cover, and then I want to talk a little bit more about. Let me actually go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So I was reading your transparency report, and Gary, this is really helpful. I'm very, very grateful that you are doing this, and I wish a lot of other entrepreneurs would also be doing more of this, sharing more openly and transparently. So one thing is, I noticed that you mentioned about that you got a $17,000 paid from the affiliates. Oh no, you paid $17,000.
We paid them.
Yeah, 776 affiliates. So assuming, let's say 20%, 30% affiliate revenue, affiliate commission that you would be paying, probably the revenue that you generated might be $40,000, $50,000.
Yeah.
Right. So my question is, what do you recommend? Like putting in efforts in affiliate marketing, because this is also in a discussion that I was having with another group that I'm in a podcast, not in a mastermind. And they're also WordPress plugin owners and founders, and we're kind of debating about like how much effort should we put it into growing the affiliate marketing channel. What are your thoughts?
Focus on the big ones with high potential only. So yes, we have 776, but probably only a few dozen actually received that $17,000 split between them. As with everything in life and business, the 80-20 rule applies, and a small number of affiliates will be generating the vast majority of revenue. So the trick is to look for the pattern of what is the profile of your ideal affiliate. And for me, we've got two groups. The absolute best affiliates are the ones who have high profile WordPress content machines. So blogs that write about WordPress basically, and a high domain authority. People subscribe to their newsletter, regularly publish content. They're the absolute best affiliates. And so what you want to do is develop a relationship with them where you can somehow motivate them, and this isn't easy, to be investing themselves in producing regular content about your products. And the way we did it with our current best affiliates was initially we provided some guest posts for them, and then we proved what revenue that was generating. And then they could say, Barn2's plugins actually sell. And we supported them then to produce their own content by, for example, giving them keyword ideas and saying like, look, this is the most successful post on our own barn2.com website. So why don't you produce your own version of it? And from my perspective, that's good because we get 2 slots, say, on the first page of Google rather than the one. So even though they're kind of competing articles, the sales will go to both, depending on who's got the higher domain authority or whatever. So we try to create a reason for them to do so. And the second group of best affiliates who are a bit behind that first group are other WordPress product companies who have similar but not directly competing products. So, for example, where you've integrated your product with another, or simply where you have a similar customer base, you might do reciprocal guest posts or something like that, or emails to each other's customers, and do kind of collaboration deals. Those can be quite good. For example, we mostly focus on WooCommerce extensions, as do Iconic. And we've got a couple of competing products, but generally we don't. We just exist in the same space, producing different functionality to enhance WooCommerce. And so they are amongst our best affiliates, and we are amongst their best affiliates. And we'll often do content swaps, or in one Black Friday, we even emailed each other's customers that had very kind of closely related plugins. So they've got a delivery slots plugin and we've got a restaurant ordering plugin. So we emailed all our restaurant ordering customers to say, this is how to let your restaurant customers choose a delivery slot or a collection slot for their food order. And vice versa. They said, this is how your delivery stock customers, how they can do an online order form for food. So we did reciprocal things. So you have to find that similarity with minimal competition.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And another follow-up question I wanted to ask is that, assuming that the revenue from the affiliate was $40,000 or $50,000 for Barn2, which based on the 1.5 million, probably like 2 or 3% of the total revenue, right? So is it worth investing all the time in growing the affiliate network, or what do you think? What do you suggest about that?
I think in 2023 we didn't put a lot of time in it. The affiliates that were already selling were the ones we'd had for years, so we don't actually put that much time into recruiting new ones. And when we do, the affiliate side of things is often a side effect of a collaboration for other purposes, like direct plugin sales or something like that, rather than through the affiliate link. So it's generally not our main focus, and we don't put a lot of resources in. But just installing affiliate WP or Slice WP or something on your site can, and people will at some point say, do you have an affiliate program?
Yeah.
It might be as simple as you're doing some sort of a link arrangement with somebody and they say, do you have an affiliate program? And they won't want to do it if you don't. Or you might say, there's an article about the top 5 WordPress document library plugins. Can you put my plugin in? If you don't have an affiliate program, they might say no. So it's not about the commission from your perspective. It's about getting in that article.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I also, as long as like it's something that growing organically, and the affiliate network, I think it's nice to have. I see, and we try to for our businesses, we tried affiliate networking, growing the affiliate channel. It seemed like a lot of effort for our team, so we are kind of like slowing down right now on that. But yeah, I think focusing on maybe the right partner, that's something that we are now focusing on, trying to find out like who are those WordPress hosting or the product companies who can be a potential strategic partner. And as you mentioned about like if they both serving the same type of customer, then and have a different not competing products, then I think it will be complementing to each other, and that will be a great way to collaborate and increase the distributions of the product.
Okay guys, so if you'd like to check out how Multicollab works and how Multicollab can solve your problems or improve your content publishing workflow, you can go to our website and click on the Try Hands-on Demo link in the menu section to access a self-hosted WordPress installation where you can test all the features from Multicollab, or you can also, if you prefer, watch a demo video as well.
So next question, Katie, I wanted to ask about how to kind of like come up with new ideas and innovative product ideas which are not competing with each other, especially right now when it's 2024. It's almost been 20 years for the WordPress. there are very few unique ideas left, like first commerce advantage and all that. So pretty much like anything that you can think about right now in WordPress, there is a plugin, for that. Just like there is an app for everything for iOS and Android, I think there is now a plugin for everything in WordPress. So yeah, what do you suggest? How to kind of like find some innovative ideas that don't compete with each other?
I disagree that there is a plugin for everything, because if you're close enough to what you do, particularly in a really specific area of it, like WooCommerce or membership or events or something, there are gaps still and that you can take advantage of. Generally, those gaps are kind of small, but if you're just starting out with products, that's okay. We started small, and our first plugin was WooCommerce password protected categories, so very specific. And we found the idea for that on the WooCommerce Ideas Forum. I think it's called something else now, but there are public roadmaps where you can see what people are asking for. And you might even find an idea that's like an add-on for an existing plugin or something, like, say, loads of people are asking for a particular functionality for WooCommerce subscriptions and they're just not adding it. Maybe that's your plugin idea. So there are ways to find gaps, and those gaps do exist. And you don't want to be really tiny. For example, another product we did, which we don't own anymore, but we did, is the WooCommerce discontinued products, because we identified that there was nothing on the market that added a formal way to discontinue an end-of-life product. So you could market it out of stock, but that messes up your reporting and things. So we created that, and that was a bit too small. It's got regular sales, but it was a lot less than all our others. Whereas other small ideas we've had made over $1,000 a month, for example. So that's not too tiny. A lot of people just getting started would be happy with that. So it depends on what your goals are, but the ideas come to you when you're close to them. That might be through client work. Our second plugin, Post Table Pro, was from a client project. So this client wanted us to build a searchable table of their blog, because they had hundreds of blog posts and they wanted an easier way for people to find posts by topic and things like that. So we built this plugin, and then we released a free version of it on the WordPress repository, and then we released a premium version, which is still doing really well. I don't know, 8 years later or something, which has this custom post types as well as blog posts and custom fields and extra stuff like that. And that was from a client project. So the ideas are there, even fast forwarding 8 years. And I have a whole document of ideas, mostly quite small, but there are lots of gaps still.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I like that you, like, when you're close to the problem, you get more ideas. So this is also an interesting debate that I had a few days ago with few product owners, which was that WordPress space, where there are a lot of plugin ideas, like lots of plugins. Some of the plugins you will find a copy, a duplicate of the same plugin, like probably built by multiple developers and the companies, because those are small ideas are very easy to copy. On the other side, when there is a complex problem or complex plugin that very hard to copy, so that's kind of like, that doesn't actually sell that well, but they have a very strong competitive advantage. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, if right now, if you try to build the smaller utility plugins, those are very easy to copy. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that happens. I think every unique plugin that we've launched stopped being unique after a while. I think that happens for the big players as well. And particularly with it being open source, people can access your code, can't they?
Yeah.
See how you did it. And
yeah.
So I think it happens both ways. And of course, you've got the whole Node GPL plugin thing, where your plugins will be distributed for free and there's nothing you can really do about that. So the trick is to be good at marketing, have a professional website, and stay ahead of the competition, and keep analyzing what functionality gaps there might be, and listen to your customers, keep a feature request list, for example, and keep adding to those products to keep them the best on the market. But yeah, that absolutely happens, and I couldn't possibly say what our revenue would be if that hadn't happened, but we're doing good regardless of that, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So Barn2 right now is at 1.5 million revenue approximately, right? And with 19 premium plugins and team of 19, what's the next milestone, next goal?
I'm not very good at goals. I just see what's working and keep doing it. So, but we identified that we had too many plugins. We had 24 at the end of the year, and we sold, well, we plus 3 plugins. So we ended up selling 5 paid plugins and 2 free ones to another WordPress company, because we were just spread too thin. And I mentioned the 80-20 rule earlier. Obviously, a small number of our plugins are bringing the vast majority of our sales. So by selling off the smallest ones, we're now in a position where all but one of our plugins is generating more than $1,000 a month, I think. And the other one is a bit of an outlier, which we use on our own site and can't really get rid of. But so all of our important plugins that we're planning to grow are doing decent revenue, and obviously some of them are way higher than that, but the worst ones are more around that mark, and that makes it much more sustainable to maintain them and things like that. So the plan is to focus on the very top selling plugins and really get through that feature request list based on customer demand. So for example, we have a WooCommerce product options plugin which adds different types of options to the product page, like checkboxes and clickable images and text fields and things like that. And customers keep asking for an image preview. So when the customer uploads a file, like a logo to a t-shirt product, for example, customers are saying they want a preview where you can see the logo superimposed on that t-shirt. So we're building that at the moment, and that will be released soon. So we think focus on what's working, and that's kind of the best way for growth. But I acknowledge that that is for more incremental, gradual growth. And I'm perhaps not the kind of visionary that thinks that from a really strategic, big picture level, like how can I make it go off the chart? That's not really my path.
Makes sense. So you had a 10% growth last year in 2023 compared to 2022 revenue, right? So are you happy with, let's say, like what's your the dream growth rate number that every year if your business is growing X percentage, you would be happy?
I just don't even do projections because I don't believe them. But for some reason, our growth at the moment is higher than other companies I've spoken to. And so year to date so far, so that's January to May, we're 21% up compared to last year, which is incredible because a lot are experiencing a decline. And a lot of that's increase in renewals, but there is also a growth of 10% or something in new sales. So that's really positive. So I'd be happy to maintain that, I suppose, but that's not a projection. That's just oh, that's nice. I wasn't expecting it. I just do my best and learn from what works and do more of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I have been trying to understand what's like average growth rate is for the plugin business, and it varies a lot. But I think I have so far found somewhere between 10 to 20% is a sweet spot. That whenever it's less than 10%, I think it's a little bit worrisome for some of the product owners. But majority of them I have found they're happy anything between 10 to 20%. If they get more than 20%, that would be probably a Christmas, for a lot of product owners. Okay, so you mentioned about decline that year to date in the last, especially 4 or 5 months, you noticed that some of the product businesses have been experiencing slow growth or no growth, and I also have been getting the similar sentiments from the other people too. So what do you think? Why is it? Like, did you able to figure it out or find a pattern that why others are experiencing a slow growth in WordPress right now?
I believe that a lot of the reason that we're growing at the moment is because we have multiple products. And 18 months ago, we released some quite big products, which have been picking up their sales over the last year as they've gathered momentum and so on. And we've added more features. So a lot of our growth, not all of it, but a lot of it is due to new products. So I feel kind of sorry for the people that have one killer product, because it's all about that one product. So it's vulnerable to, for example, a new competitor or something like that. Whereas we've got 19. And so if one goes down a bit, which has happened compared to last year, we've had big drops on some products. But I look at the overall growth and focus on the ones that are growing. And so I believe that creates more stability and flexibility, which the people that focus on one product don't have.
Yeah, that's interesting. And another thing I wanted to ask is that there is a little bit of tension going on right now, about the WordPress overall declined market or declined share or growth. Is that something that worries you, or how do you respond or react to that?
People seem to like to share negative statistics. So, for example, if you go on to builtwith.com and look at the either the content management or the WordPress usage statistics, it loads on a page which has the top 10,000 sites, top 100,000 and top million sites ticked. And they are typically going down a little bit. But then if you tick all internet, it's going up, and it hasn't decreased at all since about 2015. And in the last few months, it's actually shot up a lot on that particular chart, which is really positive to see. So it really depends on what you're looking at. And I've seen other people like Alex Denning at Ellipsis did an analysis last year sometime. And I think Yoast did as well, looking at the declining market share, and they both concluded that it isn't really at all. It isn't shooting up as much as it did in the past. So actually, looking at this chart of the whole internet on Built With, it's a very steady line. It's not declining, even the growth, and it's still 28% of all content management systems. The next biggest competitor being at 4%. So it's really the leader by a very, very, very far. And in a otherwise fragmented market. So it's obviously still the right one to bet on. And if you're really clever, actually, I did a podcast on this a week or two ago about building your product outside of WordPress. And if you have more of a SaaS model or something like that, then you can focus on WordPress and get that market share. But you can also go for other options as well. For example, the Weglot plugin has done that very effectively. They started off with WordPress, but Weglot now works on any platform. And so they've been able to scale and spread the risk. So if you are worried about WordPress, then you don't have to abandon it. You can think about how to work on multiple platforms.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. So let me ask you this question, that hypothetically, let's say 2024, WordPress doesn't exist, right? Then what kind of business you will build if WordPress doesn't exist at all?
Probably need to reskill or something while maintaining things I already have experience in. So that would be probably trying to find what replaces WordPress and hiring developers who specialize in that instead. And then I will still have the skills of building a software company, finding ideas for products, marketing them, conversion rate optimization on my website, all of that kind of thing, customer support processes, marketing. I think I could pivot into whatever replaces it. But when I've thought of doing that for now, like for example, Shopify, I don't think it's worthwhile because I think there's a big learning curve. And while WordPress and WooCommerce is still doing really well, then I should focus on that.
That makes sense. My business partner and I, we have been like, it's something that we kind of like do this little exercise every year, questioning like, okay, because right now all our 3 businesses are built on WordPress, are dependent on WordPress, so we sometimes run this experiment, like if WordPress doesn't exist, what would have been doing, and one thing that I actually really like from Syed Balki's podcast, so he was a guest on one podcast and he mentioned about, it's like there are so many different like platforms and ecosystem which are not right now populated or like super competitive, and they're also not so it's like a little bit boring, and like basic, but there's still a great opportunity to build integrations, tools, plugins, modules for that. And one of them he mentioned QuickBooks. So QuickBooks is I think the accounting and bookkeeping tool. I think it's very popular here in North America and probably other part of the world as well. But yeah, it's like he was saying there are millions of install and the users. And if we kind of like build some really good tools and extension, that can also be a lucrative business. There was like some of those, like there are other platforms too where, there are opportunities too. Yeah. Cool. So Katie, we're now going to change the gears a little bit. And I wanted to ask you, because this is peaceful growth, so I talk about the business, but then I also like to talk a little bit about how actually we manage ourselves, especially the more like our routines and habits that actually helps or hurts, how we actually do our businesses. So I'm curious to know about that you have 19 plugins, team of 19, this successful big business. So how do you manage these businesses, and especially if you can tell a little bit about your routine and your leadership style?
I mentioned earlier when we were running a web design agency, not wanting to grow a team. And then the latter part of that story is that after we switched to selling plugins, we still tried to keep everything just us for as long as possible. That's just Andy, my husband, and myself. And over time, it wasn't realistic. So the first thing I think that we realized that we couldn't keep ourselves was support. And I was doing all the customer support. And after a while, it was taking something like half my time, even though I'm really quick at it. And that was taking me away from business development. So I realized I was going to have to hire someone for support. And I didn't want to, because I thought nobody could know my products and communicate with customers as well as I do. But there was no way. You get to a certain scale that you can't do it yourself. So I hired an outsourced support company, but dedicated. So that's levelup.support, which is a WordPress support company. And they provide trained WordPress support engineers with experience of supporting themes and plugins and all of that. And it's as if they're your team member, but you don't actually have to do the hiring and the performance management and things. So for me, it was a really gentle way to get into growing the team. And my first support engineer, Edge, joined us in 2019, and he's still with us today. And as soon as I saw some tickets, the sample tickets they sent me, I was like, I would be delighted for this guy to communicate with my customers. And I thought it wasn't possible. So fast forward a bit, and we've hired gradually based on need. Usually starting with freelancing, like with developers, we use things like Codable for ages until we realized we are spending so much on Codable developers part-time. It would be cheaper to actually hire a couple of developers in-house. So that forced us to kind of do that. So because of this sort of reluctant approach to building a team, I've got quite a laid-back approach to it. I don't want to micromanage them. And I intentionally hire people who I can trust to work off their own initiative. They choose their own hours because I believe in work-life balance and lifestyle. So long as they do the hours at some point and get the job done, communicate well. I do ask everybody to post daily goals on Slack and a daily goals channel that we've got, so that you can see what everybody's working on, and that helps me to supervise them and check they're going in the right direction and things, without actually needing constant daily stand-up meetings and whatever. So, and I don't really like having meetings all the time, so we haven't implemented that. So I've largely built the team culture around not really wanting to be a team manager particularly.
Yeah.
So then a year ago, I think I was reading a business development book or something about leadership, and it said, what is it like to work for your company? And I thought, I don't know, I've never thought about it. So I ended up tweeting about it, which is usually my approach to everything. And Team WP approached me and said, look, we're setting up this index of team happiness where we survey teams in WordPress companies and see how they're getting on, and we produce an independent report for you about what your team members think. And they offered to be a case study. And so I was like, yeah, okay, save me doing the survey. And it was really interesting. And somehow people were really happy, because I never made any effort to create a conscious team culture or anything like that. My leadership style isn't anything planned. It's just what feels like common sense. And people seem to really like that. I suppose people like freedom to do their jobs and the things that inadvertently I'd created. And so we got a much higher score than the industry benchmark that Team WP had created through their industry-wide survey. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know. I just hadn't thought about it. But they did have some specific suggestions. And some of those was that they do like to have some meetings. And I was like, oh, why are they asking for meetings? So we now have a monthly social call, and the development team has a call every month, I think, and things like that. So I have listened to their feedback in quite a lot of ways. But overall, I think the laid-back leadership style seems to be working, and people stay with us for a very, very long time as well.
Yeah. You mentioned one important thing about the meeting, and that's something that I have observed in Multi-Dots. We have 120 people, and probably somewhere around a team of 15 to 20 senior leaders and managers. And one thing that I have been encouraging them all, and also including myself, that I was also reminding myself to do more monthly meeting audits. So I will go into my calendar and find out like how many recurring meetings I have. And then I'll try to see like, okay, is that something that I did need to keep it a weekly meeting? Can I change it to every other week? Can I change it to from week to month? So like questioning, just kind of like, giving some thoughts, because one problem with the leaders and managers is that like when we go in auto mode, something that we have been doing for a while, we just keep doing it, without like ever questioning that whether this is really necessary or serving a purpose. But yeah, like, so now I've reduced my meeting a lot, and my calendar now looks much better. I in fact have 2 days in my calendar, and that was, I think, one of the reason why you were not able to find the schedule, the podcast availability, because I blocked Thursdays and Fridays as no meeting days, so those are the 2 days where I go on a very like long 90-minute or a 2-hour deep work session, so that I'm not interrupted. So what about your like when it comes to your routine, so how much time do you work on a business, and how much time do you work on the other activities? If you can tell a little bit about your routine.
Well, if you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I would have had no idea. But we recently introduced ClickUp as our project management tool across the company, which brought together various other tools we were using before, like we had Trello and various other things. And as part of that, we've moved all the time tracking to it. And some of the team members were required to track their time previously, not just so I could see when they're working, but largely for project budget monitoring. So I would know how much a plugin costs to develop or something. But at that time, I started tracking my own time. And it turns out that I work for 30 hours a week, almost every week. And I didn't know that. And the week before WordCamp Asia in March, where I felt that I was nearly killing myself working to, you know, how when you go on holiday, you've got to do all your work before and it's really stressful. I did 40 hours, which is a normal working week. So obviously I am taking the lifestyle benefits. I do a workout pretty much every day during the working day. For example, I have a group of friends where I live in Mallorca, where we go walking every couple of weeks. So I'll take a day off then. I'll go out for lunch or for a walk with my husband. So and that's where the 30 hours goes. So the rest of the time I am not working. So it feels like I'm working all the time. And often I'll work on a weekend or in an evening, but the total is manageable.
Yeah. I installed this tool. It's called Rise. It's I think it's kind of like a tool which tracks your work hours and, you know, where you spend most of your time, especially on a computer. So that was kind of like also an eye-opening for me. I thought like I have a very balanced like work routine, you know, so I work and life, but then I realized that I've still been punching like 50 hours a week, sometimes 55 hours a week. And yeah, so it was kind of like interesting to just learn the patterns that and like tracking our activities. And that's, I think, a great way to kind of like start figuring out what is the ideal time that you want to put it into work and life. Great. So last few quick questions, Katie. And one thing I wanted to ask is, yeah, you have been going to a lot of different podcasts, and I've listened to some of the podcasts and learned a lot, especially the one that you did. I forgot which platform was, but you talked a little bit about a mastermind group and how a mastermind group has been helpful, and you gave some advice and tips related to mastermind groups. So I wanted to ask to just in general, when it comes to mastermind groups, you know, and having a peer group of other entrepreneurs, what were some of your learnings, and what would you advise someone to who is not a part of any mastermind group?
Yeah, that was the first ever episode of Freemius's podcast, Plugin.fm.
That's right.
I went on it and did mastermind group. So my mastermind group's been going since before the pandemic, end of 2019, when somebody reached out to me and said they were trying to get together a group of WordPress company owners that were at a similar level revenue wise. And I think they knew where I was because I published an article on it or something, as you were saying earlier. So they identified that I was within that range because they thought we can all grow together. And if you do a mastermind group with someone that's just getting started when you're established, or if you're a massive company, then you don't want to be with smaller ones. So I think it did make sense to find people that are kind of similar levels. So there's 7 of us now, and we've become really great friends. It's worked incredibly well. So we have a Slack group that we literally talk to each other every single day, including on the weekends. And it's not just work stuff, it's everything. And also we have calls every 2 weeks, in which the format is that, first of all, we each talk about our highs from the last 2 weeks, our lows, and if we want, we can have a hot seat where we consult about a particular business decision dilemma. It might be a team issue, it might be a strategic issue, it might be, look at my new pricing table, I want feedback. So anything to do with that, and people bring their experiences. And now I do know quite a lot of people that have had less successful mastermind groups. So I'd say you really need to put the time in to build the relationships and also to help people and ask for help. Because if you don't put the time in on both of those things, then it's not going to become a kind of cohesive group like ours has. But if you do put the time in, it can be a great way to make some have real connections and also learn a lot of practical things to improve your business.
Yeah, that's a good point. So last, I think, yeah, we have been, you have been very so generous Gary, today with your time and sharing everything about your business. And it's really inspiring, the success story that you have built. And most importantly, we will actually also link some of the resources, especially your year-end review and transparency report, which actually shares and talks a lot about what you did and how you did it. So we'll mention that in the show notes. But is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap this up?
No, I think this has been really comprehensive, and hopefully people will find it useful.
They definitely will. So how can people connect with you and learn more about you?
To connect with me individually and see my random business thoughts and the questions I constantly ask the WordPress community and start discussions on, then you can go to my Twitter, which is Katie Keith Barn2. And for anything about the company, then go to barn2.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Okay guys, so thank you so much for watching. Now if you are interested and would like to try this out for yourself, we offer a free trial of our Pro plan where you can test all the Multicollab features. So for this, all you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and this will bring you to this page. And from here, simply click on either of those two buttons here. Now simply enter your details, and that's it. You are ready to enjoy the Pro version of Multicollab. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.